You know what? Today's show is about a big speaker, a really big stand mount speaker. It's the new model from ZU. It's called the DWX. Now, it's the little brother to the floor stander, which is called the DW6 that I reviewed last year on the channel, and I will link to that review of the DW6 in the description. Now, the two speakers, the DWX and the DW6, share a lot in common. Practically almost everything, really. Now, they both have a 10-inch full-range driver, meaning that driver, the woofer, goes down to about mid-30 hertz range, but all the way up to 12K. So the tweeter, which is really functioning as a super tweeter, comes in at 12K. It's a titanium tweeter, titanium dome tweeter set in a deep waveguide. So it's like a horn, but it's not a horn. It's a waveguide. Anyway, so both models share that same driver complement. Now, they're both ported speakers. The DW6 port is actually a slot in the back of the speaker near the floor, and the DWX is a round port right there in the front of the speaker. So that's common. It's heavy, by the way. It weighs 42 pounds. That's not in the box. That's the actual speaker itself. Weighs 42 pounds. The construction is 3/4 inch MDF. ZU is an American company. They design and build their speakers in Ogden, Utah. The drivers, by the way, are made by Eminence, an American company based in Kentucky, where they build their drivers in Kentucky. So pretty much everything that's in a ZU speaker is US made. ZU is a direct sale company to its customers in the US, the UK, and most of Europe. Here are the complete specifications for the DWX, and you will note that it is a very high sensitivity speaker. Its sensitivity rating is 95 dB, so it's practically as efficient as many horn speaker designs. Okay, so let's take a look at the back panel, and you'll see, well, an unusual connection scheme. Yeah, there's a set of binding posts, nicely done, very nice all-metal binding posts, but below that, an alternative connection scheme. It's not like you use both. The ZU B3 connector, and it's a pro-style connector. It's a bayonet locking connector. You can't accidentally wire the speaker out of phase, and I'll point out that ZU does make speaker cables with that connector and also interconnect cables. So in any case, you're covered. You either use the standard binding post or the ZU B3 connection scheme. Don't get nervous, guys. There will be an Audiophiliac viewer system of the day later on in today's episode. But as for the price, yes, let's get to the price of the DWX. The basic price, because there's some options there, is $1,398 a pair. I think that's pretty extraordinary for a US-made speaker of this size and weight. But here's the thing. This is where there's a little dance here. The tower version, the floor-standing version, the DW6 is only $200 extra, actually $201. It's $1,599 a pair in its most basic form. So it's only $200 extra for the floor stander. And I am going to compare, by the way, the X to the 6 later on in this review. But let's just mull over this. You can get the full-size version for only $200 more. Why would you buy the smaller one, which you're going to probably have to use stands with, so they'll wind up being pretty much the same price or more if you get really good stands? And I know this is a bit confusing. Now, the thing that's cool about the DWX is you can use it in a different, let's say, orientations. You can use it as I'm showing it to you with the tweeter on top, or you can turn it upside down, and you can also lay it down horizontal with the tweeters on the inside, or lay it down with the tweeters on the outside. Again, how it puts the sound in the room will change every time you change its orientation. So in other words, what this all adds up to is the DWX gives you more placement flexibility than the DW6. Oh, I just want to say something else about the pricing of the speakers itself. The price I just quoted before of $1,398 a pair for the DWX is for the speakers finished in satin black with a black trim ring on the woofer, which I think is a pretty cool look. But my samples here are finished in red hickory, which adds an extra $300 to the price per pair, and also includes a silver, a natural aluminum finished trim ring. But the other option my review sample has is the Superfly, which includes that ZU B3 connector, because the standard version doesn't have that. It includes better driver matching, the left and right driver matching, internal wiring upgrades, capacitor upgrade. A lot of people buy the Superfly version. And then there's an upgrade from there called Supreme, which includes even tighter matching. And it's all on the website what those differences are. And I will link to that and you can read it for yourself. But the basic price, a lot of people buy it in the most basic form, $1,398 a pair. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about setup, and I'm talking about setup using stands. Your seated height should be about the same height as the 10-inch woofer is off the floor. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. It can be within 3 or 4 or 5 inches of that height, but you shouldn't be a lot higher or a lot lower for the speakers when they're on stands. You should experiment with toe-in. The speakers are pretty directional, so when you stand up they sound different, toe-in makes them sound different, and it's kind of a season-to-taste deal. I tended to listen to them with very little toe-in, but that's a personal taste thing on my part. Some people will want them aimed in directly to their ears. Oh, I do want to talk about one other aspect of the DWX setup, and that is these are terrific near-field speakers. They're big speakers. But since that 10-inch is operating essentially as a point source, I got as close as 4 feet away and was really happy with the sound. As a matter of fact, the closer I got, the bigger the sound stage was, right? The speakers as sources of sound disappeared and the sound stage just opened up. Center focus was right on the money. Great near field or even midfield speakers, or of course listening to them. Most of the time I was listening to them from about 8 feet away. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this. The speakers are sold with a 60-day return policy and also a 5-year warranty. So over the course of this review, I used a few different amplifiers, but I wanted to start with something really affordable, namely the Denon PMA600 NE integrated amp. Sells for $499, I just checked, on Amazon. So that would bring down the price of the amp and the speakers in their most basic form to less than $2,000. That's pretty darn good. A great starter system. But I also used a really low-powered amplifier, the Deckware Zen Triode, putting out 2.3 watts per channel because this is a very high sensitivity speaker. And I also used the Linear Tube Audio Ultra Linear Output Transformerless Tube Amplifier, which is a very high-end amplifier. That sounded really, really good. And for something in the middle range of electronics, I used the Heaven 11 Billy Hybrid Tube Solid-State Class D integrated amplifier. Over the course of this review, I will talk about the differences in sound between the DWX and the DW6. So my DWX listening session started with them paired to the Linear Tube Audio Ultra Linear Power Amplifier. Now, it's an output transformerless design, so it's not as tubey as you might think, but in any case, the pairing was magical. And the album I was playing that I got really into this one, it's Elvis Costello's When I Was Cruel. This is one of those forgotten records, even by me, because I'm a big Elvis fan. But anyway, it was phenomenal to reconnect with this music, and he's got a lot of juice on this record. He sounds totally into it. The bass is really punchy, really powerful coming out of the DWX. The electric guitars had some real grit to them and aggressive quality. His vocals though sounded close, very intimate, and he's like surrounded by all this stuff going on around him in the mix. This was a great way to get to know the DWX. I also played around listening to Elvis and this and other Elvis albums at really quiet late night levels. I know a lot of you guys listen really low. Anyway, yes, the DWX is a champ at playing very quietly, but it can play, medium level and really loud without losing its composure. Let's put it that way. So yeah, this is one of those rare speakers that plays quiet, medium, and loud with equal ease. As for the DW8's imaging, when I was seated 8 feet away, I thought it was really good, exceptionally wide. The speakers do disappear as sources of sound. Center focus was locked in, but I can't say otherwise that the specificity of the entire group of instruments across the stage was super tight and focused. It's not quite that kind of sound, and depth is about average. At this point, I switched over to the Heaven 11 Billy integrated amplifier, and I played this LP for Goldfinger, this soundtrack. And I've always loved this music. I like the movie, but I love the soundtrack. Shirley Bassey's powerhouse performance, still extraordinary. I mean, that woman could really belt it out. And the strings and the brass, it's just like bam, bam, bam. It just hits you really hard. And these speakers do dynamic range so well. They have no sense of, holding anything back. They can really move some air. The bass on this recording and others like the Elvis Costello, again, this speaker has a full-size sound to it. Of course, as always, when I review pretty much any speaker, if you want subwoofer type bass, you're going to wind up using the DWX with a sub. But I would guess that most people that buy these speakers don't use them or won't use them with subwoofers, because the bass coming out of the speaker is very, very satisfying on its own. At this point, I swapped out amps for the Deckware Zen Triode 2.3 watts per channel, but this is a very high sensitivity speaker after all. And it played plenty loud for me. I'll put how loud it was. And of course, I could have played it a bit louder than this, but this was a good, comfortable range for this amplifier. And I was playing David Bowie's Scary Monsters. It's actually an SACD that I have, and I was playing it with on an Oppo Blu-ray player, and the sound just jumped. It had great energy, 2.3 watts, no problem. And tonal balance with the Zen Triode on the DWX was on the warm side of neutral. I actually toned in the speakers a bit more to get a little more high end out of it. But it's just a very listenable sound. Is it overtly tubey? Yeah, I guess it is. But this speaker just loves the Zen Triode. The next recording I played was this one, Jazz Side of the Moon. This is a Chesky recording. I was actually working at this session. I think I was a long time ago. And the Zen and the DWX were making good sounds together, but I can't say I was hearing enough of the ambience of the church. That seemed a bit curtailed. I did toe the speakers in more to get more of that. It brought some of it back to life, but I wouldn't say it was ideal. But the point is, it got the vibe of the music. This is a jazz version of Dark Side of the Moon, and you just had that feeling of these musicians really listening to each other, like it's happening now kind of sound, which I really, really liked. So yeah, I'm not saying this marriage is perfect, but I'm saying if you're the kind of person that you're not interested in maximum detail and maximum resolution, the Zen Triode and pretty much any ZU speaker can be really magical, especially if you're in a smaller room and you want that intimate, even near-field experience. I think you'd do very well with a Zen Triode, assuming you can wait to get one, because there's always a long back order situation at Deckware. Okay, having gone this far, I decided to compare the DWX with the DW6 using the Heaven 11 Billy integrated amplifier. And the music that I selected to do these comparisons by was this girl group from the 80s. They're called ESG. It's kind of a punk, hip-hop, funk group. Really, really good. Great energy. These girls could really play. It's electric bass, guitar, drums. Drum sound is like one of those whack. You really feel that energy coming off the drums, especially the snare. It really jumps. And that's what was going on. So when I played the DW6, I got more of that energy. It sounded brighter, more alive sounding. And when I went to the DWX, softer, actually warmer sound. You wouldn't expect that, but the upper bass, lower mids were actually warmer on the DWX and the DW6. Yeah. So that drum, that really cracking snare drum, was less so on the DWX. So I'm not claiming that these speakers sound hugely different. I'm just emphasizing the differences between the two because they are more alike than different. But that energy difference is what really got to me. And I wanted to play the DW6 louder because I could. And it was just more satisfying. So there is that. Now, of course, I have to mention that the DW6 is fully broken in. I've had it for 8 or 9 months here. And the DWX, though they do put a lot of time in at the factory, hasn't nearly clocked as many hours. So I'm listening to a fully broken in speaker versus one that has just some time on it. So it's not 100% fair comparison, but it's what I got. I can't do anything about the differences in break-in time between the two speakers. The DW6's bass is also more agile, just higher definition bass coming out of the DW6 than the DWX. Again, not gigantic differences, just differences worth noting. Next up on my to-do list was to hook up the DWX with the Denon PMA600 NE integrated amp, $499 on Amazon. At least it was last time I checked. So it's an affordable combination, the two, the electronics and the speakers. And what I heard, and the album I was using was the Pretenders, sort of an unplugged affair. It's a live record, really nice sounding recording. And what I got was that it sounded good. It had that warm sound that I like, very easy to listen to, but compared to the other electronics I used in this review, it didn't have as much life to it. It was kind of, let's say, bland is too strong a word, but it wasn't as energetic, certainly, as the Billy. It just didn't have that kind of get up and go. But I enjoyed listening to this music. I love Chrissie Hynde's voice. There's strings on this album. String tone was beautiful. The music just did move pretty nicely. But again, you're missing some of the energy that you'd get with better electronics. So let's put it this way. The Denon PMA600 NE is a good starter amp, but it actually might be the one for the long term, depending on how much of an obsessive audiophile you are, chasing, excitement and detail and all that stuff. But if you're not that kind, this might be all you need is the Denon PMA600 NE. Okay, so let's do it. So Steve, what do you really think? What do you really think of the ZU DWX stand mount speaker? I like it. But I like almost all ZU speakers I've ever heard. I just really connect with that sound. I love that it's a full range 10-inch driver without a crossover. Every time you change an amplifier, it sounds markedly different because you're just hearing more of the amp and less of the filters of a crossover. So I love that. But the question, I guess, for this review is, but what about the DW6? I love that, and I have to say I love it more. And it's only $200 more expensive, which when you throw in the price of a stand makes them at least the same, or maybe even the DW6 winds up being less expensive. But here's the thing. I still see the flexibility advantages for some buyers of the DWX. In other words, if you're doing a home theater and you need a great center channel speaker, you just lay this puppy down and there you go. Believe me, big center channel speakers make all the difference. No comparison between something this size and a skinny little bar. No way. This is going to just clobber the little guys. And same for surround speakers. If you really are into the whole surround experience and you get to hear full range surrounds, as in DWX's surround speakers, definitely. And maybe DWX in the front left and right position, or DW6s in the front left and right. That's the sort of thing. That's where I see the big advantages of the DWX as how they can be used, how they can be integrated into a system in ways that the DW6 cannot. And with that I can say, yeah, let's do it, babies. Let's do it. Let's see the Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. This system comes to us today from Uli. He lives in Switzerland and he has some very large Pure Audio Project Quintet open baffle speakers. As for the rest of the system, there's a Lampizator computer, which is a server, and a Lampizator Horizon DAC. They look extra cool. Preamplifier is a Robert Coda K10, and the amplifiers are new Audio Frontier monos with 211 tubes. There's an Intec grounding system, and the cables come from Schwartz and Zinger. Never heard of those. Oh, and Yuli's on the waiting list at Deckware for a Sarah 300B. Anyway, thanks, Uli. All right, we are back. It's a long show today. Thank you so much for sticking around this far into the episode. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel, please hit the like button. It is important to the algorithm and therefore me. If you want to support the channel, absolute best way to do it after hitting the like button is to consider joining and contributing to my Patreon. The address is on the screen right now. And that's all I got to say today, but please check that out. And yeah, like, subscribe, do all that cool stuff for the channel. And I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.